Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. And what a way to be celebrating this day by that Bitcoin price, $100,800. Bitcoin broke $100,000 today. So we'll be checking in on that price. But today's show is all about crypto bills. I'm Jen Sinesi, here with my co-host, Paul Hastings' partner, Renato Mariotti. If you're new here, we join you every other week to talk about the latest and greatest in crypto regulation. Renato, how is it going?
Wow, things are good. It's a big week, Jen. I mean,
Every
we're
week
going to
is
talk.
a big week.
Well, I know that this is really the moment. I'd say that, all this has been building towards. We're finally looking at actual legislation in Congress, a stablecoin bill that's working its way, different versions of, different bills working their way through the House and the Senate. And then, of course, we have market structure. We finally got
Mhm.
a discussion draft. That's really exciting too. So this is the moment a lot of us have been waiting for, where we finally have what could be the regulatory framework for crypto.
Renato, you and I have asked over the years to many of our guests and maybe to ourselves even, when is it happening? Is it coming? Is this actually going to come to fruition? And it really feels like some major steps are being taken towards two very important foundational bills for this industry. I just want to let our audience know at 1:45 p.m. Eastern time today, the Senate's going to be holding a vote on the bipartisan stablecoin bill. This has been dubbed the Genius Act. And for weeks, this really seemed like it was going to be a slam dunk. But a few days ago, we heard that the Democrats have a few questions about the bill. They have some problems with it now. 9 Democrats, four of which previously voted for the bill, are saying that they're not going to support it. We're going to talk about this with our guests, but Renato, I want to get your initial reaction. And maybe for the audience, just give us a quick overview of what's in the stablecoin bill. What's the journey been like to this date?
Well, look, first of all, I'm not surprised that politicians aren't agreeing on something, right? I mean, it's pretty commonplace for, I would say, for the parties to try to exert their leverage over each other, try to gain concessions from each other. So to me, that's just part of politics. But this bill, it's important. It's going to define stable coins first of all. It's all not only going to sort of set forth, standards for what stable coins are, but it's going to also set standards for what reserves that stablecoin issuers
Mhm.
have to back currencies. So, for example, if you're issuing a stablecoin, the legislation is going to say it's going to have to be backed and reserved 100%. So if you have, let's say, USDC, it's going to have a reserve, and it makes clear that those reserves either have to be currency, so you'll have to have dollars, or you're going to have something that's a very close substitute, like short-term treasuries or something that can give the person who holds the stable coin assurance that there's an actual backing or reserve there, rather than, like, for example, there have been times where you've had stable coins issued with things like what's dubbed like commercial paper, where you've got like contracts, receivables from companies, things like that, that are backing stable coins. This is going to ensure that. It also there's going to be mandates about when you can redeem your stable coins. What how There's going to be anti-money laundering regulation, and then there's also going to be standards for how custodians are going to be regulated. So is that going to be at the state level or the federal level? And it really depends on sort of the amount of stable coins that issue.
And of course, this is becoming increasingly more important as many TradFi institutions with a lot of longevity in financial markets get into stable coins, get into tokenization, get into real world assets. This is something that's very important to multiple different players, some which have operated for much longer than some of the crypto firms that we usually talk about on this show. I want to bring in our guest now, CEO and founder of Holt Strategies and former CFTC Director of Division of Market Oversight, Dorothy DeWitt. Dorothy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, and congratulations on the $100,000 Bitcoin for all those who celebrate.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are celebrating today, so
Yeah.
I'm sure they're all waiting for it to break that next all-time high. We'll keep an eye on it as the show continues on. Now, Dorothy, before I ask you what I want to get into here, I want to remind our audience that you have the ability to ask Dorothy questions. You have the ability to ask Renato questions. You have the ability to comment under this video. We are live across all of CoinDesk socials. So if you have any questions for us, just pop that below the video and we will try to get to it. All right, Dorothy, let's talk about what's going on with the stablecoin bill. Like I said, that vote is happening at 1:45 today. The Democrats have said that there are numerous issues they have with this latest version of the bill. Curious to hear your reaction here.
So, many of the issues that have been raised by the 9 Democratic senators who wrote a letter on Monday saying that they couldn't support the bill in its current form, not that they wouldn't support it at all, just in its current form, are not new. Um, Issues around AML and KYC and who can issue stable coins and national security and financial stability, those are all policy issues that have debated along a spectrum for a while. There is one thing that is relatively new, and that is the president's involvement in stablecoin issuance and projects, and that is a new issue that has kind of been packaged in a bow and handed to Democrats to create, allowing them to create leverage now at this very last minute.
Yeah, one of the quotes I saw from Maxine Waters was, quote, "I'm deeply concerned that the president launched his own stablecoin." I know I just asked for your reaction, but I want to just dig into that a little bit more with you, Dorothy, before we get to Renato. Talk to me about these concerns that the Democrats have voiced. How do you think this is going to shake out?
So I don't know how it's going to shake out, but this is how the sausage is often made. To me, it can shake out by having the new issue be addressed directly. And that's a political issue as to whether or not there's the will to do that. And that would be to, for example, limit or bar politicians, elected officials from being involved in stablecoin and crypto-related projects. Those are solutions that are backed by Senator Warren, Senator Schumer, the various senators, 9 senators who wrote the letter on Monday, and also that solution is reflected in a new bill that was introduced, I believe, on Tuesday called "Ban Officials in Crypto Corruption Act," and so that's a direct way to resolve it. It might be technically, how is it resolved, like in the act or in a separate act, like passing the in Crypto Corruption Act. That can be done different ways. You could also have a defeat of the bill, and then more negotiations coming in the next coming days or weeks. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. They need 7 Democrats, assuming you get all Republicans voting in favor of the Genius Act, and Senators Hawley, Kennedy, and Paul have indicated that they have some concerns. So there's a not insignificant chance that they'll have to have another bite at this apple, and that bite will allow an opportunity for more negotiation.
So, Dorothy, in addition to the roles that Jen mentioned, you had also previously worked for Senator Gillibrand on a prior version of the market structure bill. So you have some experience with this, and want you to talk a little bit about timing here, because obviously there are banks who are very interested. I think Jen mentioned TradFi is interested in stable coins. A lot of folks who are watching this are interested in market structure. Just help us understand the top potential timeline here for the stablecoin bill, and whether that'll have any impact on timing of the market structure bill.
So the issue of conflicts, the new issue, has not been helpful for either of these bills. We were on the cusp of some clear cryptocurrency market structure and stablecoin legislation several years back. FTX happened, and the air went out of the sails, and nothing moved forward. My personal view is that investors and market participants are not protected without some sort of legislation that's reasonable and allows for responsible innovation with customer protections and market integrity. So my personal view is it'd be a real shame if you didn't have a passage of legislation on both stablecoins and market structure in the next year or so. You end up with exposure to consumers, investors, market participants, and other problems without clear path and legislation. So, I think there's always just competition on the floor as to what gets the votes and what gets put up for votes. I think there's a lot of interest in moving this forward. I hope it does move forward. I hope that there's some resolution of some of these issues. I would doubt if there will be resolution of all of the Democrats, preferred changes, but I hope that there is some so that it can move forward. In terms of timing, there are different things that come up in the Senate that compete against it, and it would be nice if we could move this forward relatively quickly so that we could look at the market structure bill at the end of this year, and potentially early next year, and have that be in place. It'd be really terrific for everyone involved to have a reasonable path forward for responsible innovation and consumer protection, investor protection. And I think the industry should encourage senators and House members to move forward on that. I'm sure they are.
Dorothy, you mentioned there that 7 Democrat votes are needed. 53 seats are controlled by Republicans. That means 60 votes are needed for this to move forward. Should it not be forward? Should it not move forward and we have to take another bite at this apple? What does that process look like?
The sausage making process. It's not pretty. It can really be all over the place. You can have a lot of drafting really quickly. It can provisions can move in and out. You can get consensuses moving all over the place. This is not unique to the crypto bill, but I'm sure the industry associations will be, very on top of any changes and potential revisions to the bill in its current format. Most of these issues, to be honest, have been policy issues that have been debated long and hard. And so I think there's some facility to be able to manage those. I think the issue of preventing elected officials from transacting or being involved in new projects, that to me is going to be like binary. It's going to be new and challenging and hard and has all kinds of stakeholders outside of just stablecoin, the traditional stablecoin and crypto industry.
So, yeah, Dorothy, obviously, as I mentioned a moment ago, TradFi has been very interested in the passage of stablecoin bill. It looks like that's going first. What are there any key differences between the House version, right, the Stable Act, and the Genius Act, the Senate version that you think people should be focused on?
At a very high level, I think they're somewhat aligned, and so generally speaking, they're close enough that they could be marked up and resolved together fairly well. What I would say is that one of the longstanding but open issues that was raised by Senator Warren this week in her floor speech, and then also in the letter, is whether non-bank entities can issue stablecoins like a Meta. I was at the CFTC when Libra came and asked permission to do a pilot program, or Walmart or anyone else. That's been a longstanding issue. Banks tend to like to have monopolies over those types of things and Fed deposit accounts and lending window and things like that. So the banking industry would be against it. But of course, the Metas of the world would like to have that be a possibility to issue their own stable coins. And so to me, that may be one area that sees a lot of last minute fighting. It's been the subject of a lot of policy debate for a long time now. So the lines are drawn, and we'll just see where it ends across the finish line.
Given everything we've talked about, I'm really just going to ask you for some speculation here, Dorothy. Do you think we get stablecoin legislation before the end of the year?
I hope so, and I think so. I mean, I don't think it's helped by kind of new, unusual, major shifts in market structure. And by that, I would include, having elected officials be issuing their own stable coins and involved in that. Like, it doesn't help the industry to get these things passed. I would say that is, and the policymakers who are in favor of passing this legislation may be aligned in the same party with those who are involved in this type of stuff, but I don't think it's helpful to the passage of the bill, and it gives a lot of fodder to the Democrats to be able to require and demand these changes. And to be honest, these types of things are things that the American people can understand. Like, they can understand that crypto is a fast developing industry where people can make or lose fortunes really quickly, and that it's hard to trace some elements of who's involved in what, and that there are implications to that.
All right. Well, I think, Dorothy, from my perspective, stablecoin legislation is the appetizer, market structure is the main course. That's the way I look at it. We had a discussion draft that came out this week, which was really interesting. Big deal. And it sure seemed to me, my one of my big takeaways is it seemed to give a heck of a lot of authority to the CFTC. Seemed like almost every popular cryptocurrency that you could imagine would be a digital commodity under this discussion draft. Do you think this can survive? Do you think this makes sense to have the CFTC have this large of a role? You obviously had an important role yourself at the CFTC. Do you think the CFTC is able to handle everything that this draft would put on its plate?
Um, I think the CFTC can handle it. When I was director of the largest policy division at the CFTC, we oversaw all the exchanges that traded commodity derivatives, and in turn would likely oversee the exchanges that trade spot derivatives. I mean, spot market under new authority, and examine them as well. In addition to having a team of economists that looked at developing market structure and risks, emerging risks, and trends and things like that. So I think it can oversee it. I think it's capable and able. There have been some early fears that it would extend to other spot markets and derivative and commodities like, I don't know, cattle or something. And the draft legislation has made clear that that's not even remotely on the table. So that's good. I think you have limited staff and you're unlikely to get significantly more funding. So there has to be a real focus on how to prioritize risks and rulemaking, and to be able to move forward a path to responsible innovation. But I think it's possible, and I think they have the capabilities. It's an excellent team, and they're reasonable. Like the culture is one of supporting innovation with pragmatic approaches, and so I think it's a good path forward.
Dorothy, it's interesting you say that. I remember, I guess, years ago now, the CFTC seemed like it was pushing for more oversight of the crypto industry. My read of that was, maybe that would come with more resources in funding and bodies. And so I'm curious to hear more about that. You said you don't think it will require that much more funding. You tell me a little bit how you think the CFTC can take on this remit without that.
Yeah, so forgive me if I misspoke just a little. Let me clarify. I think that it would behoove everyone to give them more funding to be able to take on this remit. But I think the practical realities are, and people are anticipating that they may be given the jurisdiction without being given significantly more resources. The CFTC is about 700 or 800 people. The SEC is 5,000 or 6,000. It's just a fraction. It used to be a sleepy little regulator since 1974, but in Dodd-Frank, because it had done a good job with the amount of resources allocated to it, Dodd-Frank gave it a much, much larger remit, and it utilized that remit really, really well and helped ensure stable commodity derivative markets for a long time. That said, I think you would need significantly more resources. It's just whether you're going to get them. And that raises, to me, a separate point. We can talk about FIT 21. It has a transition period. So after the act is enacted and before rules are made, there's exposure still for customer protection and market protection, market stability, and other things like that, because you're waiting for the rules. And it has a transition period. We can go into it in a little bit more detail, but I have some ideas that I've talked through in the Senate and would like to re-raise in coming months or weeks around some tweaks to that transition period that may be able to allow the CFTC to do more with less while they're taking on that authority.
So, Dorothy, you had talked a little bit about the pro-innovation approach at the CFTC. One thing that is uh, popularly discussed with the CFTC is that it's principles based versus the approach that the SEC takes, which is more focused on rules. For our viewers, can you help explain the difference between how the CFTC regulates versus how the SEC does?
Well, absolutely. So this is one of my favorite things about the CFTC. It's a principle-based regulation, and so exchanges like the ones that I oversaw when I was director of the Division of Market Oversight are required to comply with 23 core principles. And they can comply any way they like. There's a couple ways that are prescribe, like if you comply this way, you're good, but you can comply any way you like, which is absolutely terrific for innovative markets and industries, because you don't have a snapshot in time. You don't fix compliance as to one prescriptive way. The SEC tends to have a lot more complex and a lot more prescriptive rules and culture, frankly. And so the CFTC is a perfect place for these innovative industries, whether they're prediction markets. I designated Kalshi as the director of the division of market oversight, and that market exploded. And then, of course, you have crypto. You're the first ETF with futures. I remember getting the call from the SEC saying we're about to approve an ETF with futures that are surveilled by the CFTC, and so you better make sure your surveillance is good. And we were excited to be on the cusp of a number of these different markets, and we're capable and able to, based on this principles-based regulation. Other types of market participants, like the equivalent of a broker-dealer, FCM, they have a number of core principles they have to comply with. There are different principles for different types of registrants, but it really is a terrific way to do it. And as the industry is thinking about how might we craft our business model to be able to innovate and thrive and expand under a core principle structure, then you might want to think about talking with people like Renato or me who do that for a living. We help. I'm a regulatory consultant. I have my own company, and we help entities figure out how to thrive under the CFTC's core principle matrix. And we, can help you figure out how to do that, both as a provisional registrant and then as a registrant under the FIT 21 with the CFTC and or the SEC, or both.
I want to come back to your advice for crypto firms in just a second, but I want to draw on something Renato introduced when he introduced the segment, and it was this concept of digital commodities that's outlined. For so long, this industry has relied on the Howey test reluctantly. I think we've all talked about the issues when applying the Howey test to many of the products that are issued by this industry. Talk to me about this concept of digital commodities. What are some of the potential challenges you see when it comes to defining what these are and then regulating them?
Well, there are definitely challenges, but these challenges are being met by this draft bill in many ways, although it's not perfect. No bill is. So this draft bill does continue to allow for new asset categories and define that clearly to address some of the lack of clarity that has been plaguing the last few years. So first of all, it makes clear that stablecoins are not going to be regulated by the SEC or CFTC, except for insofar as there might be market manipulation and fraud. It also creates some new categories. So obviously it has a investment contract asset. Basically, it says an investment contract asset is the token that is issued along with an investment contract. It is not a security. So it makes it very clear there. And that's fantastic. That's something that has been the subject of a lack of clarity for a good bit of time, and has been made it very difficult for path for responsible innovation to move forward. It also creates a new exempt offering path so that issuers can sell restricted digital assets without full SEC registration, subject to certain disclosures and filing a notice of intent. This is great. It allows for investors to get the disclosures that they need. It allows for the SEC to promulgate rules that allow for investor protections and other things like that. And it gives the issuers a new path to offering. Here's what's really critical is up until this bill, you would have digital asset commodities or digital commodities trading on, if there were spot jurisdiction under the CFTC, trading on CFTC exchanges. Those are often called designated contract markets. I oversaw them. And then you'd have securities trading on national securities exchanges. Well, this bill changes that. It says that digital asset securities and digital asset commodities and stablecoins can trade side by side on a broker-dealer's ATS. And that's terrific. The industry has wanted to be able to have all of those trades side by side. If you want to just be registered with the CFTC, you wouldn't be trading digital asset securities. If you want to trade the whole panoply, you would be registered jointly with the SEC and the CFTC. Now, there's not most of the market is not jointly registered. Most of the exchanges are not jointly registered, or the broker dealers or other things like that. So it's a new kind of overlapping set of rules that you would have to comply with, and the Act directs the CFTC and the SEC to coordinate on simplifying and reducing overlap and conflict in their rules. That is easier said than done. But conceptually, it allows for a lot more utility. And if you were registered with both, it wouldn't really matter as much whether something were a security or a commodity. The provisional registration allows you to register with the CFTC, and then you have a safe harbor if you are an exchange that may be matching orders in securities and commodities. So I hope that helps.
So, Dorothy, one thing you touched on a moment ago that was so, I thought, important in this discussion draft is the bill as it's currently conceived by, this is the House Financial Services Committee and the House Agricultural Committee coming together on this bill, market structure bill. It makes clear that even if a digital asset is sold pursuant to an investment contract, which would ordinarily make it a security, that doesn't mean that the digital asset itself is a security. In fact, essentially, like you have like an orange grove where you're selling that pursuant to an investment contract, but the oranges are still a commodity. And so I'm curious, you mentioned securities a moment ago. What digital assets would be securities under this bill? I think it would be a fairly limited scope.
Yeah, so I think the commodity definition under here assumes that there's some level of decentralization. Let me just turn to the right place here. But a second, please. Let me regroup here. A digital commodity, an investment contract asset, is not a security so long as it doesn't have some of the hallmarks of securities. And those are traditional, and the way that it's defined, it's a smaller subset that would be securities than certainly under investment contract jurisprudence up until now, and Gensler's view. You might have direct issuance, and those would be restricted securities. So an ICO or something like that, where an issuer issues securities as part of their investment contract, those could be restricted. Those can be considered securities. You can also have exempt securities, and those would be securities that have more of the hallmark of tokens that have more of the hallmark of securities. Maybe they give a interest, equity-like interest, or a profit-like interest in the issuer or something like that. So you can have securities. You can have exempt securities. It's just that most of them are likely, and most of the extant securities are most likely to be classified as investment contract assets and as commodities that would be traded on the exchange. To me, the key issue is, how do you classify existing securities? Because there's a whole transition if this act is enacted. So one transition is SEC registered broker dealers will probably notice register with the CFTC so they could trade across everything. The SEC and the CFTC have to issue rules to allow for trading to be on ATSs that would allow for commodities, stablecoins, and securities all in the same thing. And then you also have these restricted securities that are restricted in terms of, there's some mechanisms that prevent them from being dumped on investors in the marketplace or market participants. So there's a limited types and numbers of selling that can take place for those who have restricted securities that have been issued by the issuer directly. So there are a bunch of different transitions that market participants would want to be aware of and think through and figure out how to move forward on in the first year or two or three after this is enacted. And I think most of the existing blockchains will be deemed, this is a kind of a new concept, deemed as mature blockchains. And mature blockchains are blockchains where you have blockchain and tokens that are involved that were securities that have become sufficiently decentralized and other elements of it to then be such that the tokens go from being securities over to commodities. And so what I think would happen is that the way that mature blockchains are deemed matured is they file with the SEC to say we become sufficiently functional and decentralized, and so we should be deemed as mature, and we shouldn't have to do all these other disclosures and other restrictions and things like that. And so I would imagine most of the blockchains would come to the SEC as this is being rolled out and say we're a mature blockchain, and here's why. The SEC has time to challenge that if they don't agree, and then it can go to court if there's not disagreement. There's a whole process for that. And if a blockchain goes from being mature and decentralized and functional to less so, the SEC can come back and sort of reverse that, or the CFTC and SEC can do that as well. So to me, I think most of the existing tokens will come to the SEC and say we're mature. There'll be like a bottleneck of kind of responding to all of those, and then there will be some sort of designation or deeming of that, and then those will be like clearly trading and transacting on CFTC regulated exchanges as commodities. There will be a subset that the SEC either isn't filed as certified as mature, and then there will be a subset the SEC believes is not mature, and those will kind of go through the system and process of trying to figure out, are they securities, are they not? It could even go to litigation, but that would be just a smaller subset. You kind of have two paths, and the bulk would, as you said, go the direction of being a commodity and being transacted on CFTC regulated through CFTC regulated entities.
I want to come back to your advice now for market participants who are reading this draft, who are listening, Dorothy, to you kind of explain some of the ins and outs here. How would you advise them to take what's written in this draft and start applying it to their business strategy within the days, months to come?
Absolutely. So first of all, I would familiarize myself with this draft legislation and the Senate draft legislation. They're very different, but I think I personally think this is a reasonable path forward. There's some uncertainty, I think, as I said. The issue will be not what's an investment contract, which has been the issue for the past number of years. There may be an issue as to what's mature or not, and that will have its own sort of factors around that will be developed out. But I think they should take a look at this. I think they should really take a look at the core principles that are reflected in the CFTC's portion of this bill. And I think they should start now. There's no reason not to start now, thinking about how they're covering off on the core principles of the CFTC on each one of the core principles in this act. And because you can cover off on it in any way you like, with consistent with your business model and your risks and your goals and other things like that, you can do it the way that you want, but it has to be done in a way that has an internal control framework that's reasonably designed and effectively implemented to achieve compliance with these core principles. And so folks like me and my company assist potential registrants and market participants in figuring out how you take a principle or a concept and how you apply it into your business across different business models, so that it will achieve the standards of the CFTC. Now, you can, after this bill is passed, assuming it's in similar form, you can get certainty and avail yourself of a safe harbor by provisionally registering with the CFTC and following those core principles. And I would start now to think about how you're covering off on those and what you need to do to make changes to do that, because it takes a little while. Technology takes a little while to change, and it takes a little while to sort of establish those internal control frameworks and risk controls to achieve compliance with the core principles. And you might as well start now, because regardless of some of the details of this legislation, you're fairly certain that you're going to need to comply with those core principles. And you're probably fairly certain that you're not 100% sure whether you are there yet. And sometimes you may not be sure how to. And so I would start thinking about that now, reach out to the likes of Renato or me or plenty of other good options to start that conversation and thinking about it.
One topic that we've discussed a lot on this show, Dorothy, is the role of states in regulating digital assets. Of course, in the stablecoin bill, there's been some debate about that because there's a debate about whether or not, state regulators are sufficient regulators for stablecoin products. I'm curious also what you think about not only about that, but also about the role of states in market structure. In other words, is this market structure bill displace the role of state regulators? Will they be regulating alongside in this case, largely the CFTC? I'm curious your view on that.
Yeah, it's a great. It's one of my favorite topics. So to me, let's leave state securities regulators aside. They're a little concerned about, their consumer protection without some sort of regulatory scheme in place. So having one in place would be good for everyone. But let's just focus on financial regulators like, I don't know, DFS and the other analogs across the states. Their remit is generally like safety and soundness and anti-money laundering and such as that. But because of a dearth of federal regulation in the past number of years, you've ended up having state regulators decide that to protect their consumers, they need to become market regulators. So, trading and manipulative trading practices and all this stuff. So you saw state regulators like staffing up these sort of like trade surveillance and market surveillance teams and things like that, which to me doesn't make a lot of sense. Like trade, market integrity and trading in markets is really a federal area of expertise. I'm not sure it makes sense for state by state financial regulators to staff that kind of function up. I think it's better done at the federal level. And this legislation does that exactly. It basically says the CFTC will regulate fraud and manipulation on commodities, SEC on securities or mixed securities, and trading will be overseen. Trading markets will be overseen by federal regulators. So I think it kind of obviates the need to have that 50 duplicative market regulators at the state level, and to me that makes a lot of sense. You can have a standard set of rules across the nation, and standard enforcement and examination and compliance, and less duplication than you've had before.
I want to talk a little bit about a use case here to just kind of make sense of this for the audience. And I want to draw in on PYUSD, PayPal stablecoin, right? That's issued by Paxos, regulated by NYDFS. If these bills get passed that we spoke about here today, what changes there? Does anything change for the issuer and the folks who participate in the stablecoin?
Sure. So the Genius Act suggests that issuers can choose to be regulated. So payments, that's a state banking regulation thing. If we have a dual banking system, so the states can be the primary regulator or the feds can be the primary regulator, and usually the issuers can kind of decide. And so up to the limit of about $10 billion in issuance, issuers can choose to be regulated by their state regulators. And after that, it goes over to the federal regulators because it has a much larger reach and national impact and such. So I think that was one of the vexing issues in the last several years around payment stablecoins, is how do we deal with our dual banking system and the state's desire to have some regulatory role in this industry, and also to, of course, do the enforcement and get the fines that come out of that. It's a real consideration. And so that was resolved in the Genius Act in this threshold way of $10 billion, and that makes a lot of sense to me.
So the market structure draft that we've been talking about that came out from the House Agriculture and Financial Services committees this week contemplates that its effective date will be 360 days after it's enacted. It also contemplates joint rulemaking during this period by the SEC and CFTC. Given your experience at the CFTC, how do you expect that joint rulemaking to to work and practice? And do you anticipate that there may ultimately be rules that are promulgated after the 360 days that will create a bit of a changing framework for market participants and other people who are interested folks who are watching this broadcast?
Yeah, so the statute requires rulemaking to be completed within about 360 days of the effective date of the passage of the legislation. That's not even remotely possible. So Dodd-Frank, after 2008, was very big. It gave joint rulemaking requirements to the CFTC and the SEC in certain areas around swaps, and it also gave unilateral rulemaking to each of the agencies in other particular areas. And when I was at the CFTC, nearly 10 years after Dodd-Frank was enacted, I finalized the largest and hardest rule position limits after 3 or 4 attempts over nearly a decade. It just takes a lot more time to do rulemaking. So what you have is agencies who often will just ignore that requirement. And it's not helped if you're cutting staff left and right. It just is sort of, there's just a throughput issue. And of course, you have to have enough time for notice and comment and such. Joint rulemaking is not as smooth as individual rulemaking by the agencies. It can be slower and more cumbersome. The agencies try hard. They don't always see eye to eye, and there's a real David and Goliath feel between the SEC and the CFTC, which is much smaller. But that said, the Congress has been clear on where it wants to direct, the bulk of this industry to be regulated. So that gives the CFTC a little bit more of a even seat at the table. But I think the timelines are not even remotely realistic. What I would say is that I think that makes the transition period much, much more important. When I was in the Senate and since then, I've advocated for maybe a self-certification that you're complying with the core principles and a report. This example is grounded in precedent and securities regulation and commodity derivatives regulation, that you're complying with it as a provisional matter. This bill provides for optional provisional registration. I'd be inclined for something that with a little bit more of a carrot or a stick or something to get more entities, if not all, provisionally registered. The reason why is that provisional registration serves a very, very important purpose. The folks who are involved know that they've got regulators' eyes on them. They are less likely to do kind of the FTX stuff. They've got some examination. I don't know if exposure is not the word, but they're subject to examination. And there are also a whole bunch of other investor, consumer protective requirements and other things that would prevent some of the problems that we've seen, FTX and forward. And so the sooner those protections are in place across as large of a swath of the industry, the better. Because I think the overall industry wants there to be fewer frauds or problems or mistakes or errors that cause further harm, and to kind of just move along towards core principle compliance so that they can innovate, move forward, protect consumers, protect markets, etc. So I'd like to see a little bit more on the transition until there are rules. Of course, some of the things that I like to see in a transition period after enactment and before the rules are finalized have precedent, and they can be replaced by the rules, so they're not permanent.
Dorothy, I've asked many of our guests on this show this. We have the next SEC roundtable happening on Monday. And just given your background at the CFTC, do you think the CFTC should have a seat at the table in these roundtables that are happening?
That's a great question. I love that question. I have gone in person to each of the roundtables because I think for me it's important to be in the room where it happens. And I know a lot of those SEC folks just because we work together, and I think they've done a terrific job. I really laud them for the work that they've done, and for those participants, and particularly for the moderators who've done yeoman's work. I do think they should have a seat at the table, but to be honest, I can't imagine they're not invited. I'm surprised they're not showing up. I think it's important to be there. I think it's important to listen. I think it's important to hear. One of the key parts of the Fit 21 Act, which is what the main focus of today, is it works really hard to create a seamless transition between maybe issuance of a security that it gives an exemption for, to becoming a mature blockchain environment, to then becoming a commodity and being under CFTC oversight and not the SEC's oversight. It really intends to create a clear process of evolution and the clear ability to be able to raise money and to be able to innovate. And so to me, all these House members have worked so hard on creating that clarity, and for that clarity to really have substance, where the rubber hits the road would require also clear transitions between authority between the SEC and the CFTC. And were I at the CFTC, I would be going to each of these and sitting there for the 5 hours as in my capacity to make sure I'm understanding the nuances of those transitions and what are the key bottlenecks and points of pain and other things like that, so that you can help implement those through rules, or maybe even give feedback around the draft legislation to make sure it's all seamless. So I have been surprised not to have seen any, if not many, CFTC senior folks there. And I'd like to see that going forward. If I were there, I would be doing that.
We've been talking a lot about market structure. I mean, obviously, it's a big week. And I think one thing that makes sense to do is to sort of talk about how how will that impact ordinary people who are involved in this industry who are listening to this broadcast? In other words, it's obvious, like if you're a lawyer, you're a compliance professional, you used to be the general counsel of Coinbase. Okay, sure. In that role, that really matters to you. But if you're somebody who is trying to build a business in this space, why does having a market structure bill pass matter to you?
So if I were a market participant, like a customer of a Coinbase or others, I would look at the provision that says that uh, an exchange or broker dealer can't custody my assets; they have to be custodied by a qualified custodian. So if the exchange goes down, goes bankrupt, those assets are safe, and that's one of the requirements. It's clear. It's someone new and it's more refined than it was in the 2023 version. It seems terrific. There are a lot of other protections. There are disclosures that are required that I'd be interested in if I'm deciding whether to take a position. There are important elements that are kind of dealt with differently if a market participant is hedging versus taking a position that helps ensure market integrity. There's asset segregation. So when I talked about custodians, I said it just slightly wrong. Like FCMs have to use qualified custodians, and that's the broker dealer version of the CFTC. And then the exchanges themselves, they have to use custodians as well. So there are lots of protections that are there. If I were innovating in the industry, I'd kind of breathe a sigh of relief to say, gee, this might be a little challenging to figure out how to comply with all these new core principles, and we got to get from here to there. But what a relief to have a clear path forward, to be able to get this structured and in place, and then to be able to focus our time and our team's efforts on innovation, to make sure our customers who might be customers of other entities in the ecosystem are protected not only by us but by the others in the ecosystem, and we're less subject as an industry to kind of being sideswiped by some other entity that does something like FTX and causes all kinds of roadblocks to be put up. So I'd be breathing a sigh of relief, both as a customer and as an innovator, and I'd be saying, okay, we're gonna have to get from here to there on these core principles. Let's get started.
Dorothy, thank you so much for joining our show today. I think we had an incredible conversation, and we'll continue to follow the developments on both of the bills that we spoke about. So we hope to have you back on the show sometime soon.
Jen, Renato, thank you so much, and good luck. Thanks.
Awesome. That was the CEO and founder of Tolt Strategies and former CFTC Director of Division of Market Oversight, Dorothy DeWitt. Renato, it is just you and I again. I thought that was a great show, a great summary of action that has happened with crypto legislation in the past few days. And we will be seeing each other at Consensus very
I'm
soon.
excited, Jen. It's always consensus is always fun. It's always a place where you can bring together a lot of folks in the industry to have important conversations. And what a difference a year makes, right? Like last year, consensus, you and I were talking about, regulation by enforcement and the war against crypto. And
Mhm.
here we are now talking about legislation and regulatory frameworks and a path forward. It's a very exciting time.
I think last year at Consensus, and I could be wrong because I get my consensuses mixed up, but I feel like SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce told us that she didn't feel like people in Washington cared enough about crypto. And like you said, what a difference a year makes. I think people in Washington very much care about crypto, and we're seeing that in many different
Yeah,
ways.
absolutely. I still remember that conversation we had with Commissioner Peirce, and it was crazy. She basically was like, "I want to have innovation. I want to have a regulatory sandbox," and no one cares,
Mhm.
and no one is listening to her. And now she's leading roundtables, and we're here
Yeah.
discussing a regulatory framework that both parties in Congress appear to be coalescing around.
And part of that regulatory sandbox was this path to progressive decentralization. And like we just spoke about with Dorothy, that is very much reflected in the market structure bill, in this concept of mature blockchains. And so, yeah, who knows what we'll be talking about next
Yeah,
year.
it's an exciting time. Looking forward to seeing you at Consensus. Looking forward to having all of you tune in as we're on CoinDesk live from Consensus next week. And boy, we are going to have some exciting conversations for many weeks to come, as this legislation works its way through Congress, and as we, get more and more rulemaking. As Dorothy told us, that might drag on for years and years.
What a difference a year can make, and what a difference an hour can make. Bitcoin is up 1% since we started the show. It's at $101,300. Who knows where it will be at the end of the day? And who knows, Renato, maybe the market is reacting to the amazing conversation we just had. I'm just putting it out
Oh my
there.
God. Well, what I would love, and what I'm interested in is what your reactions are. We've had some great comments, people digging up, for example, what Dorothy said years ago. She's pro crypto even back in 2019.
Mhm.
True. But I'm interested in your comments, your suggestions. So please let us know. Let us know what you think of our guests. Let us know what you think of the conversation and what you want to hear about. Because boy, there's so much to cover. That market structure bill, over 200 pages long, just a lot to digest, a lot to discuss, and there'll be more changes, I'm sure, to come in the weeks ahead.
All right, everyone. We will see you next week live from Consensus. I'm Jen Sanasi. That's my co-host, Paul Hastings' partner, Renato Mariatti. We will see you next time. Thank you.